fursuit crush didn't want to get a picture with you. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. Let's get this shit show started. Hi, how are you? My name is Beta or BetaEtaDelota, and I talk about furry informational stuff on the internet, and that's exactly what we're doing today. This is sort of a weird impromptu follow-up video to one that I did about 3 years ago on interacting with your fursuit senpai. Yeah, that's an old video. Didn't do too well at the time because fursuiting interaction tutorials aren't really needed, and granted, this one probably won't do as well, but wishful thinking here. The people that need to see it hopefully will see this one. But in all seriousness, I've gotten some questions about doing a fursuit interaction video as a follow-up to the one that I did 3 years ago, because I'm a fursuiter now, and I wasn't a fursuiter before. So, sure, let's do it. But also, the idea for this video came to be when I was at Texas Furry Fiesta 2022. I had to be at opening ceremonies to do some GOH stuff, and I was just sitting there chilling, and two of my friends who were in fursuit, Omnom and 12 the Lion, came up on stage, and the wonderful con chair, Sable Griffin, gave a little spiel about how to interact with fursuiters if you haven't done so already. And I was sitting there listening to her talk, and I was like, holy shit, she's doing a better job at explaining this than I ever could. So I started taking notes, and this is sort of the result of it in this little one-page document. Really, only one page? I feel like you'd need like a Harry Potter's book length of rules for interacting with a fursuiter without pissing them off. That's sarcasm, by the way. It really isn't that hard to interact with fursuiters. But either way, I put together some little notes and ideas or rules for interacting with fursuiters as a means of being respectful and nice, and not being one of those people that are told in stories of being problematic with interacting with someone in a suit, which is really hard to get to that point, let me say as well. So just understand that if you're watching this, you are likely not part of the problem. It's just nice to get a little refresher. Also, with this being a follow-up to my video from 3 years ago, this is more of a reality check for interacting with fursuiters. Yeah, because I think one of the common issues with getting this point across of interacting with fursuiters in a respectful manner is that the people that need to hear these rules or need to see this video likely won't see it. And that's kind of sad to think about, because I wouldn't be making this video if the issues weren't already there to begin with. Even from personal experience, with these rules that I'm laying down, I've experienced the exact opposite of that. And I've been fursuiting for about a year now in furry conventions, if that gives some perspective. So like I said, this video will serve as a reality check for some folks that decide, yes, furry convention, fictional universe, I can do what I want. Feelings of other people? No, we're not doing that. In all seriousness, these rules that I have set are pretty good, and I'll be giving some of my personal experiences and stories along with them, so hope you enjoy. I haven't done this recording outside a live streaming thing in like 2 months, so it's kind of weird. Hi, how are you? But anyways, this is the impromptu Furry Things episode of Interacting with Fursuiters, the reality check sequel. Starting with the most important thing, fursuiting does not equal consent, or cosplay doesn't equal consent. I know, you've heard this talked about multiple times and seen it on all sorts of billboards around furry conventions. What this means is ask for permission. That's the first rule. When you want to interact with a fursuiter physically. Why does everything I say sound like an innuendo? When you want to interact with a fursuiter that requires you to be within like a 6-foot distance from them, and requires them to do something in return, you ask for permission. See, that sounds a lot better. But seriously, asking for permission is probably the most overrated yet also underrated rule in this sort of guide. This goes for hugs, pictures, and any sort of touching of the fursuiter. Say, for example, you want to boop them, or you want to touch their ears or touch the fur on their body. Like, oh, it's so soft. Can I touch your fur? Can I also touch your tail? That just kind of goes. You ask for permission, you ask the fursuiter if it's okay to do that. On top of that, you can ask the handler of the fursuiter, which I don't think I talked about in the previous installment of this. A handler for a fursuiter or cosplayer acts as sort of the eyes, ears, mouth, voice box thing, communication for the fursuiter that wouldn't normally be able to do so. When I have a handler go around with me, they help me out with making sure I'm not getting crowded, they make sure I'm not being a fire hazard, If I need to talk to them and I need to go to the headless lounge immediately because I'm about to pass out, I usually tell them that. But 90% of the time, I am going around in fursuit with a handler. And handlers are the best people you should be communicating with, not directly with the fursuiter if they have a handler. But if you come across a situation where a fursuiter doesn't have a handler, still ask for permission. However, when you don't ask for permission, usually the fursuiter will be pissed off. And if they have a handler, usually the handler will kick your shit in. I'm getting off track from this. This is sounding like a threatening video. I don't mean for this to be the case, I'm sorry. But if you want a picture with a fursuiter in which you need to take a selfie, or you want a picture next to them, touching them, hugging them, just ask them. It's very, very simple. The fact that something as common sense as this is the first rule shows that we're not off to a good start. So the first rule is pretty straightforward. Just ask them first. It's very easy. Worst they could say is no. Now, the reason why I'm driving this point home is because, well, it's still an issue. I think we talked about that earlier, that fursuiting doesn't equal consent. The fact that you see it a lot is because people still continue to do it. And granted, I'm under the opinion that if someone breaks this rule, that they should be called out for it, like hard. It's a really pessimistic point of view, I do apologize, but it's more so the point that I've experienced it personally, where people have just kind of come up to me and sort of not asserted their dominance, but acted a little too friendly when I don't know them, and just been like, hey Maverick, let's get a picture, and then they just go up and touch me, and I don't say yes or no. I know this is sort of a small fraction of people that do say hi to me, but on the uphand of it, a lot of people end up asking me if they want a picture with me, rather than saying, hey, picture, now. That's another thing as well, you don't say it, you ask it. I guess the sort of point of view you should take on, well, in this position, is that imagine they said no already. Or imagine that you do not have the right to do it, which granted is sort of the case here. It's actually very much the case here. And you are asking if you can do it. Imagine you're asking your parent if you can get ice cream, you know? Like you hear the ice cream truck and you're like, Mom, can I get some ice cream? You don't just go and grab your parents' wallet and take cash out and go for that ice cream. Your mom's not going to be happy about it. Mine would get out the belt. You have to treat it in that sense, like you need that permission first in order to follow through with it, because if you don't, consequences will be had. The unfortunate thing is that furry conventions don't really enforce consequences in that matter, but at least from my experience with being touched without permission, it happens, but it definitely isn't as often as the people that do genuinely ask for permission and are very polite and respectful that, hey, I'm a fursuiter. I'm also not really a commodity for their sake. They're just being respectful in the sense. So just ask for permission. Don't say, hey, we're taking a picture, we're doing this. Unless you're close friends, that's a different story. But if I've never seen you face to face, we're likely not friends unless there's a very specific circumstance, but that's also different. Yeah. I'm rambling on. But when I've been in fursuit, I've been touched, I've been groped, I've been this and that. But in the end, I think it ultimately comes from those that really just don't care at all, which you can't really control that. But let me just say, for those that do follow the basic rule, you're already like up here. I know there's this constant worry for some folks where they worry that they're going to be a problem or a nuisance or a pain in the ass for fursuiters by, wanting to get a picture. Let me just say, here's the threshold where you would need to be for me to be pissed off at you when I'm in fursuit or just interacting with me in general. When you ask me for a picture, you're already up here. You're nowhere close to this threshold. Asking for a picture, you already have my respect. Let me just tell you that, just to put that into perspective. Also, that adds another layer of it where there's anxieties. There's a lot of social anxieties with wanting to ask someone for something, especially someone you haven't met or someone that you're really excited to and you really want that hug, but there's obviously this nervousness with that. So when it comes to just hugging or physical contact with a fursuit or asking for permission for a hug, for a glomp, which usually you shouldn't do that, lifting up a fursuiter, doing other things, getting physical, you ask for permission about it, but you also make sure to listen for the response from them. If they say no, they probably say no for a specific reason. Don't question it from there. Also, don't think that you're the problem either. Again, if you're asking, you're still up here, okay? It could be something as like, hey, Beta, Can I like pick you up? Even if it's something that I don't want to happen, you're still up here with asking and respecting my decision for it. You're nowhere near that line, okay? Just to quell some worries. With sort of the other end of it, with pictures. When you are asking for a picture with a fursuiter, to sort of quell some worries of rejection, 90% of the time, they will say yes. You have to keep in mind that fursuiters love getting pictures. And this isn't because furries are narcissistic or full of themselves, but it's simply because you're in a fursuit, you can't really take pictures of yourself. So when someone wants to take a picture with you or of you, usually you want to see it. That's another subsection of this rule as well. When you ask to take a picture with someone, you take the picture. Also ask if they want the picture as well, whether it's a physical photo or digital, whether you're going to post it to Twitter or you're going to post it to a Google Drive or something. Ask them if they want the photo too. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've been in fursuit and I've done a really good pose or had a really good picture with someone. I'm not able to take every single photo that I can. Same thing with my handler. They're already dealing with the 10 other people being like, Beta, can you sign my foot? Please? They're already dealing with that. They can't take every single picture of every single person that I get a picture with. So when someone else gets a picture, most of the time, when they take that picture, I never see it again. And I'm thinking like, oh, that's a really good picture. Oh, oh, okay, bye. And I'm kind of disappointed. It's not the worst thing in the world, but keep in mind, furries love getting pictures. Fursuiters love pictures, and they love seeing those pictures, so ask them if they want to be sent those pictures too. But the bottom line is, when it comes to getting a picture or any sort of physical activity with a fursuiter, obviously within acceptable range, ask. Keep in mind, there's no such thing as a bad question. Granted, there is such a thing as sexual harassment, so if you're asking me to do something sexually, that's kind of fucking weird. Yeah, don't do that. Please be respectful of the fursuiter. These fursuiters are people. I know, an absolute shocker. But that, when they're out and about on the con floor, is actually this, but with a layer of spandex. A majority of you won't need to worry about this, because when you see a fursuiter running to the Headless Lounge and you're like stopping them being like, hey, can I get a picture with them? And they're like, sorry, I can't, I gotta go to Headless. Most of the time, if not all of the time, you would think, oh, yeah, they just need to cool off and it's okay, I'll give them some space. But there's always those people that take it personally, which let me just say, it's okay. If a fursuiter says no, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. They are not the worst person ever either. Just keep in mind that fursuiters are people too. They can get overwhelmed. They can get really hot and overheated. They can't see too well. They can't hear too well. When they need to de-suit, they need to de-suit. You gotta keep in mind that people are fragile. I'm fragile. I'm extremely fragile in fursuit. I'm also a person. Wow, who would have thought that? I know. Kind of driving the point home with this sort of idea that I'm a person, but it needs to be reiterated somewhat because, again, this is very much an issue. I've had people try to call me out for not getting a picture with them or being rude to them at a convention because I didn't get the picture with them or didn't give them a hug because I was literally about to pass out in fursuit. And yes, I communicated this. So if it hasn't been obvious, this rule goes for those that think that a fursuiter is there to cater to you. If a fursuiter needs to do anything but cater to your specific needs, reconsider. Just try to understand and be respectful that the fursuiter might need something else that they need to do. They might not be in the mood for pictures. You're not obligated to get a picture from them or a hug from them, but at the same time, don't think that you are the problem with it. Again, this line here, you're here. Even if I say no, you're all the way up here. You are not a problem, okay? Keep in mind as well that you don't know that fursuiter's life story, like what they might be going through or the reason why they might need to not get a picture with you. Granted, you probably aren't really deserving of a reason either. It's just understand that a fursuiter can say no for whatever reason, and that is okay. The fursuiter is sort of in the fictional sense of what you understand. The fursuiter behind it, or the person behind it, that's more the reality sense that unfortunately might not be as understood as much. So just be respectful. If the fursuiter needs some space, or if they need to de-suit, or if they need to go to the Headless Lounge, it's gonna be okay. You'll get to see him again. It's also not the end of the world if you don't get to see him. It's okay. I think that's the big point of it. Maybe this is just a motivational video of like, oh, your fursuit crush didn't want to get a picture with you. Hey, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Look, there's another fursuiter there from the same maker. Why don't you go say hi to them? Here, I'll take you over. I'll introduce you to them. Yeah. Wow, I really am kind of sounding shitty, aren't I? That's kind of, wow. I'm kind of not great. Sorry about that. But still, it's sort of a good point. Just understand, hey, if a fursuiter doesn't want to get a picture, it's not the end of the world, and it's okay. But understand and be respectful that they are a person outside of that they can say no. That's pretty much that rule. And I guess to give some consolation or understanding with it, when I'm in fursuit, 90% of the time I will say yes to each and every person that wants to get a picture with me. Sometimes I'm moved into a spot where I need to be moved out of the way so that I'm not a fire hazard, but I also have situations where the fursuit head weighs 5 pounds. Yes, he weighs 5 pounds. We weighed it. It's an actual weight. So I'm wearing that on my head at all times. Plus, the fursuit gets really hot. It gets very moist, so I'm smelling myself. I kind of don't smell great. You know, there's that layer of fursuit spray that's making it smell good. But God, yeah, it's sweaty. It's a bit uncomfortable. I also get very overwhelmed when there are a lot of people around. Like, keep in mind, like, I'm used to one-on-one conversations very easily, and like with Twitch chat, talking with people, pretty okay. But when there's a lot of people surrounding me, it gets a bit overwhelming. I have a very small social battery. I have a social battery the equivalent to a tiny penis. Small and shriveling, that's what it is. But most of the time, when I have to say no to a picture or a hug from someone, it is usually because I am trying to rush over to the headless lounge as fast as I can because I'm about to literally pass out. If I don't get horizontal, or somewhat horizontal right now, my body's gonna make me horizontal. And that is not something I want people to see. So please try to keep that in mind. It's more of the reality check side of things. For those that see only the fictional part of the fandom and think, yes, everything is catered towards me, so on and so forth. You may not think that those people exist, but they do exist. Let me tell you. And I'm gonna try and talk about this in the least cynical way that I can, because I tend to get very passionate about this and talk about things that sound very talking down towards others, like holier than thou sort of perspective, and I don't like doing that. So I'm gonna word things a bit more carefully and just understand there aren't really too many rules from this. It's just ideas that you might want to follow if you haven't already. If you haven't followed the last two, chances are you likely need these next couple. The next big thing, fursuiters aren't there for you or only you. It's more of the perspective. If you haven't understood the last two rules, here's more of the reality check of it. You know, if you can't be respectful, understand that the fursuiters out there and out and about on the con floor aren't there for you, and they aren't there to cater to your every need. Fursuiters don't owe you anything, like a hug or a picture or anything. And also, fursuiters aren't doing the fursuiting thing just for you. They're also doing it for them because they want to go out and about and want to enjoy the con as their character. Keep forgetting, fursuiting is the same thing as cosplaying, as a character that better sort of fits you, like a personality or character that you want to be. That's what the point of fursuiting is. So they're not there to cater to your whims or act in a way that you want as well. They're also not paid either. This isn't Mickey Mouse who's scheduled to be out and about at 6 to 7 p.m. in Tomorrowland. Actually, to be fair, you could pay me to fursuit and we could make that happen. Just not in Disney, because Disney does not like furries at all. So just sort of keep that in mind as well, that the fursuiter owes you nothing. All right, we've more or less covered the basics. The next couple of rules are more or less just fun little tidbits of information that you shouldn't do if you haven't followed the last couple of rules, which God bless your soul. Next big thing, you probably don't hear about this a lot, but don't be a gaggle. What does this mean? Don't follow a fursuiter around. Don't try to join in with the group that they're with, or if they're fursuiting, don't like go along with them. Usually they don't want to be followed around if they're doing their own specific thing. Again, it relates to the first point of this. Ask for permission. If you want to join with them while they're fursuiting, just ask them. Most of the time, if people are joining along with me or going around with me before asking me, yeah, that puts my anxiety through the roof. That is like the ultimate thing that makes me uncomfortable sometimes. Now, granted, keep in mind, there's a difference of it where you're going to the same area as they are, like if they're going to the dealer's den or something, and you're going to the dealer's den right after you said hi. That's okay, but sometimes it's apparent when folks follow me around or try to follow me into Headless Lounge. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that, please. Just don't try to follow a fursuit around. If you want that interaction with them, I understand that, but just give them their space. Let them roam. Let them have their adventures. As soon as they walk out and are about at the con, this isn't insert your name here and Fursuiters adventure together. It just doesn't become that, you know? Just leave that one interaction and let it be. You know, let them go off and do their thing. So I think that's the big thing. Just don't follow a fursuiter around. I know obviously some people will be conceited with that and try to be secret about that, but just don't do it. It's only obvious after we've gone to the same 3 places and I'm going to the Headless Lounge and you're following me there. I've had situations where folks have done that. It is not comfortable. When people are following me while I'm in suit or even out of suit, it's kind of a yikes. Also, that kind of goes with the rule as well. Don't go into the Headless Lounge. I know that doesn't really have anything to do with fursuiter etiquette or interacting with fursuiters, but it's still a point of like, hey, don't do that. Don't hang out in the Headless Lounge. Also, don't take pictures there. That's really fucking weird. Actually, that's extremely not okay. Don't do that. But the point being with being a gaggle or following fursuiters around, don't hover around them. Don't follow them around unless they ask you to come along or if they say it's okay for you to follow along. You know, most of the time when you want to meet a fursuiter, you just want to sort of say hi and get that picture, get that hug, and then go back to what you're doing. You don't change around your sort of convention to be like, let's seek out this one fursuiter and let that be it. And this also goes for furry conventions in general. Don't make your convention experience based around this fursuiter being there and you need to meet them. Some expectations can be created when fursuiter X, Y, or Z announces that they're going to a convention. Don't work around your schedule or don't make that a point to be like, I want to meet this fursuiter, and if I don't, my convention experience is ruined. Granted, you know, it'd be nice to see them. Obviously, most folks, most of you guys are in that category of like, I want to meet this fursuiter, and if not, that's okay. There's some that make it their lifelong mission and will be like, I want to spend as much time at this convention with fursuiter, and it just gets a bit creepy, stalkerish. Actually, that's exactly what it is. I've had situations where I've been followed around, or, you know, it's someone's lifelong mission to only meet me at a convention, and that's all they came there for, and if they don't, they are disappointed. It's very stalkerish. It makes me not want to fursuit, believe it or not. Inadvertently, it ruins experiences for others as well. You know, when I'm uncomfy, I just don't want to be in fursuit, or I don't want to be around. So just don't do that. Don't ruin it for others. Don't ruin it for me either. I don't want to be followed around. I'm already being followed by my friends and my handler. I don't need a train of people following me either. Unless I'm going to like a corner of the room for like pictures, or if there's a lot of folks that want to see me, I'll just go into like a little corner where there isn't as much traffic. But just don't hover and don't follow them around. But it's very circumstantial. Most of the time, this rule doesn't even apply to you. You are all fine. Trust me. I guess going off from the whole hovering thing or following a fursuit around, don't cause a fire hazard. That's sort of the next big rule. You know how there's the meme that went around with some fursuiters or content creators or YouTubers where people became fire hazards, where they blocked an escalator or an entranceway to somewhere. The idea of being a fire hazard is that you are there and people are stopping you. This doesn't just go for the fursuiter, because the fursuiter is usually aware of it, but they can't help it when they're stopped. Don't create a fire hazard out of a fursuiter. This goes for the number one sort of big thing when you are stopping a fursuiter for a picture. Don't cause a fire hazard. If they're just getting off an escalator or getting out of an entranceway or they're not stopped, don't like stop them there. If they're off to the side, obviously in like a wide enough hallway where there's space and you can stop them for a picture, you can do that. Just don't do it obviously out of entranceways or at the end of escalators, or where there is when there's a route for people moving around. When there's traffic, when there's people traffic, don't try to stop them there. You can stop them in the hallway when there's a wide enough space. That's a good example. A bad example of stopping someone in a hallway or a walkway is in the Heaty Boy, the Sky Bridge at MFF. That's a good example of when not to stop someone when you're going different ways. So sort of keep that in mind. Just don't create fire hazards out of fursuiters. Most of the time, I'm very aware of my surroundings, and fursuiters are somewhat the same way as well, where, oh shit, I'm being a hot fire hazard. Well, I'm just gonna pick things up and move over to that corner where there are a low amount of people where we can corral people around there without creating a fire hazard or taking away from other people's convention experiences. So just keep that in mind if you are adding to the fire hazard or adding to the pileup. That's all. Most of the time, fursuiters will just move to a specific spot. I'll just do that. I'll just be like, okay, I'm moving over there. You can see me over there if you want. And that's that. It's just a nice little note, tidbit of information. It's not bad. The reason why I mention this rule is because people have actually gotten pissy with me because I didn't want to get a photo with them then and there, right outside the escalator entrance or exit, or in front of an elevator, or when I'm waiting in line to step out of line. Like, people have gotten pissy with me about that. Ultimately, I can't control that, and ultimately, I shouldn't care if people are pissy with me about it. The reason why I say this is because situations have happened where I've become the fire hazard as a result, or I haven't heeded to other people's wishes, and they hate me and they try to say to others that I'm not a good person, all because I didn't get a picture right outside the escalator, or I didn't get a picture in the Heaty Boy, the Sky Bridge at MFF, just to put that into perspective. But I guess the message here should be that, hey, fursuiters, might not be as aware of their surroundings as they can be. That's why they have handlers. But also, people should also be aware of their surroundings when around fursuiters as well. That goes for stepping on tails, that goes for giving them enough space, that goes for not blocking any paths, which goes for being a fire hazard. You know that little pop-up as soon as you launch Pokemon Go, be aware of your surroundings? Yeah, that goes for the fursuiter and those that want to interact with the fursuiter. And I guess the last little tidbit of a pointer that I could give that I've seen a lot more recently, which might need some addressing, is don't be a handler for a fursuiter if they don't ask for it. Don't try to assume the position of being a handler for a fursuiter if they don't ask for it or if they don't need it. I mean, granted, needing it and seeming like they need it is different from when they ask for it. This sort of goes with the whole permission thing as well. If they ask for help, if they ask for something, that's your invitation to do that. But I've seen it happen a lot more, and I've had it happen personally to me, where someone has tried to assume the position of handler for me at a convention, where they've tried to move crowds out of the way for me when I don't need that. And they're also not con staff. And it also puts me in a bad light, which, let me just say, the help is appreciated. If you want to be a handler for someone, it's very much appreciated. If you want to be the handler for someone, I understand that, and it's definitely sweet, but it might not be needed. Fursuiters might not need a handler, and they're okay with going around on their own. Sometimes fursuiters already have a handler. Usually it's Nexca, and someone asks to handle, and they're just like, what the fuck? I'm right here. Hello? Which again goes back to asking. It's okay to ask and receive no for an answer. It's a-okay. So overall, just don't try to assume positions that the fursuiter doesn't already have. Don't try to assume that a fursuiter needs a certain thing. Communication is a big thing too. The fursuiter or the handler can communicate. The point of the handler is for communication on behalf of the fursuiter. Don't just assume things are what they are. Ask, talk, communicate. I know I'm asking furries to communicate. I'm also an example of a furry that can't communicate for shit. Just communicate. The worst that could happen is no, and even then, that's not the worst. It's not the end of the world. I know a lot of these ideas and rules that I've talked about are sort of repeats of one another and sort of build upon lingering issues that also relate to the previous rules, but just keep these in mind. And fursuiters will have wonderful experiences, and you'll also have a wonderful experience on your own end. But either way, that should about do it for my ideas or rules. I don't know if these are really rules for interacting with fursuiters. I know a lot of the ideas are repeating itself over and over again, but a lot of this should just be have respect for fursuiters. Understand that there are people outside of the fursuit. And I understand it can be very easy to be caught up in the fantasy-like world of the furry fandom. It can also be very nerve-wracking trying to interact with fursuiters that you might look up to or you might enjoy what they do. You just might want a big fluffy hug. Like Palace Beast. He's a big fursuiter. I get anxiety when I want to say hi to him or want a picture with him or want a hug from him. I get all these anxieties and worries. It's very normal and it's very okay. But if you keep the bare minimum of having respect for the fursuiter and just asking, you are completely a-okay. And a lot of you probably won't even need to keep this in mind because it's just second nature to be respectful. I know this is for the folks that might not understand or might just not care at all. But again, just know that for you at home watching this probably doesn't apply to you. And you are okay. But just keep these ideas that I said in mind. If they're hard to practice and everyone will have a good time. Everyone will have a good time, and we won't have as many stalker stories. That's the thing as well. I still have many stories to talk about of people just downright not even doing the bare minimum of being respectful. So I guess that's a win-win. If you keep these rules in mind, we won't have stories like this, unless people are lying. But either way, that should about do it for these rules and ideas that I have for fursuiter etiquette, interacting with fursuiters. If you followed this and the last video that I did, which was like 3 years ago with Pakariru, which you should go and watch it if you haven't already, you will be A-okay for your next furry convention, or your first one. Maybe you're watching this because you haven't ever seen a fursuiter in real life. Which, hey, good on you for doing the research beforehand. You are way above where other people might be. Besides that, just for some tidbit announcements, you should totally go and watch the original furry things on fursuit etiquette, how to interact with your favorite fursuiter, how to meet your favorite fursuiter, so on and so forth. The original video was really good. I put a lot of effort into it. YouTube kind of didn't like it for some reason, and it didn't do as well as I thought. Just go and give that a watch, because this is the whole anthology series to interacting with fursuiters that I can possibly give. On top of that, I'm looking to create some sort of document or article that showcases literally every little bit of fursuiting etiquette that might be needed for anyone that hasn't interacted with fursuiters, maybe even applying it to cosplayers as well, not just being furry eccentric, but applying to Comic-Con cosplayers. Say you really want to cosplay as Jacko from that fighting game with the Jacko pose. Say you want to do that. I want to create some sort of guide for those that have never interacted with cosplayers before. I know it'll be an absurd amount of words on a screen, but, you know, I want to create just the go-to guide. So if you have any other ideas that I haven't mentioned already, please be sure to leave them in the comments below, along with any other stories that you have, either as a handler or a fursuiter or someone that experienced one of those two, a bystander, whatever you may have it. Leave your stories and comments below, because they'll definitely help me out with creating a better article for this whole thing. Besides that, for an even bigger announcement, I do stream on Twitch if you haven't known that already, twitch.tv/BetaEtaDelota. It's been more of my passion project recently outside of the YouTube stuff, so if you could go and support me on there, I'd greatly appreciate it. Twitch Prime, you know how that works. Seriously, it helps me a lot more than you know. But either way, that should about do it for me. Feel free to share around this video to those that might be new to the furry fandom, or anyone that you might know that might be new. I'm trying to do this revamp on the whole furry informational series, so we have a set sort of class for this. Like, we'll have different lectures about different topics, but I want to create one set class on YouTube for YouTube videos that will sort of give you the best summary of what furries are and everything you need to know about them. So any support on these videos and anything else that I do that isn't furry related is greatly appreciated. Other than that, that about does it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful night, and as always, stay life jacket. Take care.